One of the least understood aspects of narcissistic psychology is that the narcissist does not merely judge people. They first create the standards by which people will be judged. This distinction is critical. Most people assume the narcissist evaluates reality and reaches conclusions. In many cases, the opposite occurs. The narcissist establishes a value system that serves their psychological needs and then interprets reality through that framework. The judgment is often predetermined because the scoreboard itself has been designed to produce a specific outcome. Human beings naturally evaluate themselves and others through various metrics. Competence matters, achievement matters, character matters, relationships matter, physical health matters. These forms of evaluation are part of normal social functioning. The narcissistic process becomes distorted when a single metric is elevated above all others and transformed into a measure of total human worth. Complexity is reduced to a narrow hierarchy. The entire person becomes defined by a single dimension. This narrowing process is rarely accidental. The selected metric often reflects an area in which the narcissist feels superior or wishes to feel superior. Wealth, status, appearance, education, intelligence, influence, authority, spiritual attainment, social popularity, or professional success can all become preferred metrics. Once selected, the metric is treated as absolute. Everything outside of it becomes secondary or irrelevant. This creates the foundation of a psychological scoreboard. Within this scoreboard, value is distributed according to rules established by the narcissist. These rules often remain unspoken. The target may never consciously recognize them, yet they influence the entire relationship. Every interaction becomes a subtle comparison. Every success becomes subject to reinterpretation. Every weakness becomes evidence supporting the hierarchy. The target often assumes that the scoreboard reflects objective reality. This assumption is one of the primary sources of the narcissist's influence. The individual unknowingly accepts the frame through which evaluation occurs. Once the frame is accepted, the conclusions begin to feel self-evident. The person starts asking whether they are winning or losing according to standards they never chose. Alfred Adler observed that feelings of superiority and inferiority play a significant role in personality formation. According to Adler, individuals often develop compensatory strategies in response to perceived deficiencies. Narcissistic dynamics can be understood through this lens. The narcissist constructs a hierarchy that reduces internal feelings of inadequacy. By defining the terms of value, they create a psychological environment in which superiority appears guaranteed. This superiority is rarely stable. Because it depends on external comparison, it requires constant maintenance. The narcissist must continually reinforce the scoreboard. They must repeatedly communicate what matters and what does not matter. This is where signal-based reinforcement enters the picture. The narcissist sends messages that continually redirect attention toward the chosen metrics. Some signals are obvious, others are subtle. Together they create a persistent evaluative atmosphere. Conversations become filled with references to status, success, attractiveness, achievement, influence, or whatever category dominates the hierarchy. Stories are selected carefully. Comparisons emerge repeatedly. Certain accomplishments are praised while others are ignored. The pattern appears natural until one notices the repetition. The same metric continues appearing because it serves a structural function within the narcissist's worldview. Over time, repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates acceptance. The target gradually internalizes the scoreboard without realizing it. This process resembles psychological conditioning. The nervous system becomes trained to monitor performance according to the selected metric. Emotional reactions become linked to success or failure within the imposed framework. The person begins evaluating themselves automatically. At this stage, the scoreboard no longer requires active enforcement. It becomes self-sustaining. The target carries it internally. Thoughts, decisions, and emotions become filtered through the same hierarchy originally imposed from the outside. The narcissist's evaluative system becomes part of the target's self-perception. This represents one of the most powerful forms of psychological influence because it continues operating even in the narcissist's absence. Object relations theory provides additional insight into this process. Otto Kernberg emphasized the role of internal representations in shaping psychological experience. Relationships are not only external interactions, they also become internal structures. When a narcissistic relationship repeatedly imposes a particular hierarchy of value, that hierarchy can become embedded within the psyche itself. The external judge gradually becomes an internal judge. Heinz Kohut's work on self-psychology offers another perspective. Kohut argued that healthy development requires empathic mirroring. Individuals need experiences that support the formation of a cohesive sense of self. Narcissistic relationships often replace healthy mirroring with conditional validation. Approval is granted only when the individual occupies the correct position within the hierarchy. Recognition becomes contingent upon conformity to the scoreboard. This creates instability in identity. The individual learns that worth is conditional rather than inherent. Value becomes dependent upon performance within a narrow set of criteria. Self-esteem becomes vulnerable to constant fluctuation. Success provides temporary relief. Failure produces disproportionate distress. The person begins living inside an evaluative system that was never designed for their well-being. The most damaging aspect of the narcissistic scoreboard is not that it is harsh. The most damaging aspect is that it is incomplete. Human beings possess countless dimensions of value. Courage cannot be measured solely through wealth. Wisdom cannot be measured solely through status. Integrity cannot be measured solely through popularity. Resilience cannot be measured solely through appearance. The narcissistic hierarchy ignores complexity because complexity threatens the hierarchy itself. A rigid scoreboard requires selective blindness. The narcissist must minimize evidence that contradicts the preferred ranking system. Traits that elevate the target are dismissed. Accomplishments are reframed. Positive qualities are overlooked. The hierarchy remains protected because acknowledging the full complexity of reality would destabilize the structure. This explains why many targets feel perpetually trapped. The game appears impossible to win because winning was never the objective. The hierarchy was not designed to measure reality fairly. It was designed to preserve psychological superiority. The standards shift whenever necessary. New criteria emerge when old criteria stop producing the desired outcome. The finish line moves because the purpose of the system is not evaluation. The purpose of the system is control. Many people spend years attempting to prove themselves within this framework. They pursue greater achievement. They seek validation. They collect evidence. They defend themselves against accusations, yet the scoreboard remains unchanged. Every accomplishment is absorbed and reinterpreted. The hierarchy survives because it was never based on objective measurement in the first place. The turning point occurs when the legitimacy of the scoreboard itself is questioned. This is often a profound psychological shift. The individual stops asking whether they are succeeding according to the narcissist's standards. Instead, they begin examining the standards themselves. Who created these metrics? Why were these criteria selected? What assumptions support the hierarchy? Whose interests does it serve? These questions expose the architecture of the system. Once the framework becomes visible, its authority begins to weaken. The target recognizes that evaluation is occurring within a constructed reality rather than an objective one. The emotional grip of the hierarchy starts to loosen. Self-worth becomes less dependent on external ranking and more connected to internally chosen values. Recovery involves expanding the definition of value beyond the narrow dimensions imposed by the narcissistic framework. It requires rebuilding identity around principles that reflect genuine complexity. Character, creativity, resilience, compassion, competence, wisdom, purpose, and personal growth become valid dimensions of evaluation once again. Human worth is no longer reduced to a single metric. Ultimately, the narcissist's greatest advantage is not intelligence, status, or manipulation. It is control of the scoreboard. The narcissist creates a system of measurement, persuades others to accept it, and then uses it to determine winners and losers. The target's liberation begins when they realize they were never obligated to play the game. The scoreboard was not reality, it was a psychological construct. Once that construct is recognized, its power begins to dissolve, and a more authentic sense of identity can emerge in its place.